Welcome to the State of the Nation Weekly Update. My name is Mike Sham, and today I want to talk about the progress of South Africa and our place in the world. As we know, we've just gone past the 100-day mark of the Government of National Unity. There's been a tremendous amount of analysis about whether the Government of National Unity is working or not. I think that the jury is coming out relatively positively because the government seems to be working a whole lot better. There seems to be some action among certain of the cabinet ministers, and things are going along pretty nicely on a country level. We've seen the rand strengthen, interest rates come down, there's a bit of investment, people are seeming to be a little bit keener to do their jobs. We've had movements in places like Home Affairs, Public Works, electricity. We've even had the Minister of Trade and Industry travel abroad to go and speak about investing in South Africa. These are all very, very positive things. And let's be fair, these are actions that we haven't seen for the last 15 years. Ever since, following the 2009 election, South Africa has just been on a steady slide downwards by every metric. But the time has now come for us to get even more aggressive about improving South Africa. And there's some very, very, very low-hanging fruit that I feel that we haven't quite understood yet. And that is that South Africa just loves to score own goals. Own goals are just the worst thing that you could possibly do because the opposition has done nothing and you are punishing your own team. And in that case, I want to talk about, to me, one of the craziest own goals that we keep on doing, keep on scoring, and that is in the world of global politics. Now, we can all agree that the world has changed. It's no longer what was called the unipolar world, where the USA and the West were in charge. They were the only game in town. It was the only place that you could do business with, only decent markets you could access, the only people that could fund countries. That world has gone for good. It's not coming back in the foreseeable future. Never will we have one superpower only. And what have we seen in the last generation? We've seen the most spectacular rise in China, as China threw off the shackles of communism, opened its markets, and did an enormous amount of trade, pulling nearly 500 million people out of poverty. At the same time, a similar transformation happened in India. Those are the world's two biggest countries by population. And India, the Indian success story has been nothing short of just spectacular, as they liberalized their economy, invited investment, joined the global brotherhood of countries, and really have benefited from doing trade with just about everybody. South Africa, unfortunately, seems to be obsessed with ideology over common sense. And by the ideology, I'm talking about the ideology that's stuck in the 1980s, where there's this good guy, bad guy, South Africa must choose a side. Now, please hear me carefully. I am saying that South Africa is in a unique position where we could benefit from all the major economies in the world. Historically, we got a lot of investment from the West. Europe, USA, they're still the biggest investors in this country, and they are still our major export markets. We sell more stuff to the West than we sell to the East. We buy a lot more stuff from the East than what we sell back. We are perfectly placed between the two, and what common sense says we should do is trade with both sides. The best example of a country that trades with not just both sides but all sides is India, where India's policy is completely informed by what works for India. Now, South Africa just recently has slammed in own goal after own goal after own goal. Right? We've discussed at length the fact that South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice. Morally, a very strong thing to do. Geopolitically, quite a questionable thing to do because it's going to anger people. And that can lead to trade agreements being shut, and these things can backfire on a country. But hey, there was a moral thing to do, and South Africa did it, regardless of the economic cost. We also failed to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We now have President Ramaphosa at the BRICS conference, which is actually taking place in Russia, where he says he wants peace and never mentions Ukraine once in a speech. At the same time, he meets with the leader who's been completely anonymous of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Mahmoud Abbas. Once again, no talk about peace when you're speaking to those parties. The trifecta we got this past week when the South African Foreign Affairs Department told the Taiwanese liaison office to vacate their premises in Pretoria. Now, Taiwan used to have diplomatic relations with the old South Africa when Taiwan were looking for any friend in the world, and the apartheid regime was happy to recognize Taiwan as a country, one of the few countries in the world that did. In the new South Africa, we said, hang on, China has a problem with us. We'll downgrade our relationships with Taiwan to being more of a trade mission, liaison office. And for the last 26 years, this has been going along just fine. We get a lot of stuff from Taiwan, and we sell a lot of stuff to Taiwan. A good trading partner. Everybody seems to be okay with us, and we don't recognize them as a country. So we just downgraded them. It's kind of called playing both sides of the game. We understand that China will not be happy until Taiwan is once again part of China. But all I know is that when you go out and make these big political statements, somebody is watching and somebody is going to damage you economically. And I'm not talking about the fact that we need to kowtow to anybody. We just need to hold the middle road. Don't take my word for it. Look at what India's doing. Look at what Turkey's doing. These are countries that are also in the middle of the same argument, that are very, very adept in negotiating the geopolitics of it all. And while we're on the subject of geopolitics, understand that South Africa remains strategically important. South Africa is at the point where the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans meet. It's a popular trade route, especially when there's problems potentially with the Suez Canal. People will come around the Cape, which they're doing right now because of the Houthi attack on shipping in the Mediterranean. A lot of trade is happening around South Africa from all parties, regardless of which side of these particular conversations you'd like to look at it. We get things coming to and from the west, things coming to and from the east. China itself is very careful to act quite diplomatically about everything except the Taiwan situation, which is fine. Taiwan is a domestic situation for China. But they don't go and rush out to condemn people and take people to courts and things like that. They just want to do trade. In a country that has 50% unemployment, this should be the issue that drives our foreign policy. What is in the best interest of South Africa? And understandably, with the history that we've got in South Africa, we must be aware of human rights. It is an element, it's a talking point, it's a thing that South Africa has got a very, very big emotional connection with, because the old South Africa trampled on human rights, and we don't want to sit by when other people's human rights are being trampled upon. But these situations aren't as clear-cut as what you had in the old South Africa, where you had this legal framework which was just against the way any country should be run. But we're in a new world now. We're in a multipolar world. We've got big countries, big groupings that we can trade with everybody, and become very, very much better off for doing so. We don't have to, it's not one or the other, it's one and the other. Why our leaders continue to want to absolutely cling on to ideology over what's best for the country is crazy. These people in South Africa that are unemployed must look to the leaders of South Africa that are foregoing opportunities in order to make an ideological point. And I'm saying that the thing that should drive South African policy is what is in the best interests of South Africa, and then work accordingly. We have seen European countries that have said that Israel must stop bombing Gaza. That's fine, you can say it. But they don't go out there to go and take it a step further where one side or another will stop trading with you. South Africa continues to do this, and it's unnecessary. We need trade. We need to do what's best for South Africa, and it doesn't mean we just trade willy-nilly with everybody and gangster organizations and terror groupings. But sometimes you've got to weigh it up as to what is your best option. I don't see what we get out of this tacit support that we give Vladimir Putin in Russia. It's not helping us with our relationship with China. It's not helping us with our relationship with India. And Russia offers us very little other than some of their oligarchs that have got interests in South Africa and donate huge amounts of money to the ANC. Right? It's not in the national interest, and maybe in the ANC's interest. And I think that it's important that South African citizens understand this and understand that our foreign policy is what stands between us and success in many cases. We have got the opportunity, like we have, for example, with Ford, which is an American company that produces cars in South Africa, Mercedes-Benz, a German company, Volkswagen, a German company, right? Let those people also invest in our country and give our people jobs, meaningful jobs, create industry, create downstream industry, because it's not just about those vehicles that are assembled in South Africa. It's about the downstream industry. I mean, I don't know how many people understand that. For example, a massive amount of leather is sold to the car producers that produce cars in South Africa, largely in the Eastern Cape, in the case of some of them up here in Gauteng, but it gives birth to a whole industry around providing leather for seating for those cars. It's not just the factory that's exploiting labor. No, there's other products that we can sell. Our agricultural produce is going all around the world. Just don't annoy our trading partners. Let's just get back to business. Let's keep our head down. Let's do the right thing when it matters. And in some cases, we are going beyond the call of duty to support old friends where ideology is trumping common sense, and it's time to stop. Obviously, I mentioned the term trumping because South Africa is sitting in a precarious position with regards to the US election. It looks, if one looks at the movements over the last couple of weeks, that US election is way too close to call, and if you had to give a slight edge, you would give it to Donald Trump. We've got to imagine what life looks like with a second term of Donald Trump, who's not terribly fond of Africa to start with. However, when he was president, he didn't break the current trade agreements between South Africa and America. Let's just not go out there to willfully sabotage those relationships. We don't benefit at all from it. And keep on understanding that countries like China, like India, they've done superbly well, as I said at the start of this, but they still have many hundreds of millions, way in excess of the entire population of South Africa, of their people are still poor. Are they going to invest in South Africa while they still got poor people in their countries? Not in your life. They're going to do their investment domestically. You need to go to countries that are already developed, that are looking for other new avenues of investment. That's where our investment's going to come from. It means that we need both those relationships. And if anybody in South African politics could please understand that there's no need for us to be on one side or another. Just take a leaf out of the book of what India does, what Turkey does. Trade with all of them. Have your say. If you feel better, it makes you sleep better at night when you condemn this or do that, that's fine. But make sure that it doesn't affect our bilateral arrangements with all sides of this particular equation, because it's going to become even more important in the coming months and years as the world moves closer and closer to a multipolar world. We're there. It's going to become even more ingrained, and we have got the rare opportunity, because we are in a great position to trade with everybody. So, join me supporting Pace Car Rental that keeps State of the Nation going, and support the State of the Nation. Subscribe to the channel and keep watching the State of the Nation. But it's time for South Africa to do what's best for South Africa. Thank you so much for listening to me. We'll see you again on the State of the Nation.